For decades, the LSAT had 3 scored sections, but in 2025, one of those is gone. Logic games, historically the most intimidating section, is no longer part of the test. Not reduced, not restructured, removed entirely. And what's left is a leaner, more focused exam. Now you've got only 2 scored sections, logical reasoning and reading comp. That means no more diagramming games, no more memorizing templates, no more wasting time prepping for a section that doesn't even exist anymore. This is not a small shift. It is the biggest LSAT change in decades, but most students haven't adjusted. They're still using outdated prep books, still following Reddit study plans from 2021, and still drilling logic games like they're coming back. They're burning time and energy on strategies that literally don't apply anymore. But here's where it gets interesting. The skills the LSAT now tests, they're skills you can learn faster. You can improve logical reasoning. You can get better at reading comp. You just need a system built for this version of the test, not the one your friend took 5 years ago. But first, you've got to know the blueprint cold. The LSAT is not a content-heavy test. It is a test of structure. The same argument forms and logical flaws show up again and again. The same passage types, the same question traps. The trick is to stop seeing each question as new and to start recognizing the underlying structure. In logical reasoning, this means learning to spot causal reasoning errors, conditional reasoning traps, sampling issues, correlation-causation mix-ups, and necessary versus sufficient confusion. And once you've seen each of those in a dozen questions, you start seeing them everywhere. It's not about guessing, it's about knowing instantly, oh, I've seen this before. You start thinking like the test makers, and that's the shift. Same goes for reading comp. Each passage follows a format, and it is not random. Once you can spot how the author's argument is built, what they're advocating, comparing, or critiquing, you don't get lost in the weeds. You track tone, you track structure, and the details fall into place. Now, most students approach the test like they're transcribing everything they read. They highlight entire paragraphs, they write full sentences in the margins, and they try to absorb information like taking notes in a lecture. That is the wrong approach. This LSAT is not about remembering facts. It's about filtering out what doesn't matter, spotting the structure fast, and applying logic under pressure. So your job is not to memorize. Your job is to filter. For logical reasoning, that means reading the argument slowly the first time so you only have to read it once. Then noting only the indicator words like conclusion markers and contrast words and labeling the flaw as soon as you spot it, not with a whole paragraph of notes, but with one word. For reading comp, it means mapping the structure of the passage in your head, the introduction, the main idea, the evidence, and any counterpoints. You also want to note shifts in tone, because the author is rarely going to tell you outright how they feel, but it'll leak through in phrases like, it's tempting to assume, or many scholars mistakenly believe. And most importantly, you are not reading to retain information, you are reading to learn how to navigate the passage. Once you think like you're scanning, rather than taking notes, you move through sections faster with more accuracy. Now, here's something few students ever actually do. They don't analyze their own mistakes in any meaningful way. They get it wrong, then they see the right answer and they say to themselves, oh, I see, and they just move on. That means they're basically signing up to make the same mistake 2 days later. But if you're serious about improving, you've got to build a feedback loop. You've got to build a database of your own personal cognitive errors. Let's say, for example, you got a strengthening question wrong. You got to ask yourself, what trap did I fall for? What assumption did I miss in the argument? And why did the wrong answer seem appealing? Then you label it and keep a spreadsheet or a notebook where you categorize every single mistake. This is not meant to punish you. It is meant to help you generate patterns and better understand what your mistakes you're making and why, so you can avoid making the same ones again. Because after you log 100 mistakes, you're going to notice that 70% of them fall into 3 major categories. That is not random, that is gold. Once you've labeled your patterns, you can then preempt them. You'll start spotting them before they even register consciously, and that's how you go from good to great, from the 160s into the 170s. Now, let me ask you this. Are you practicing like it's the real thing, or are you practicing like it's a casual homework session? because how you practice is how you perform. If your setup involves pausing the timer, getting up for snacks, playing music, or doing just one section at a time, you're not training your brain for the real test. You're training for some magic easier version that doesn't actually exist. Real prep means setting a full 2-hour block, the same start time as your actual LSAT will be, with no breaks, no distractions, same chair, same lighting, same computer, using the actual LSAT Law Hub interface, not PDFs, not printouts, not books, and tracking the time, but not rushing. You want to focus on consistency rather than speed. Then you want to review in detail, not just the errors, but any close calls. Note, where did you hesitate? Where did your confidence dip? And where did your process break down? Fix that. Don't just fix the question in front of you, fix the mechanics behind the question. And of course, test day involves building up your stamina by designing your studying with deliberate constraints. Because what breaks people on test day is not a lack of knowledge, it's fatigue. It's all the mental noise, the pressure of watching the timer and wondering to yourself, am I totally blowing this right now? You have to train not just your skills, but also your mindset. So you've got to set constraints in your practice that are going to make the real test feel easier. Like, for example, doing a full section with some distracting noise in the background, like construction, maybe from a YouTube video, or dogs barking, maybe taking a practice test after a bad night's sleep, or taking a section after a full workout. This, of course, is not just to torture yourself, it's to build your confidence that you can do well even if you're not in the ideal conditions. You want test day to feel familiar, because when your nervous system's seen it all before, it's not going to freak out. And that calm is what lets your logic show up when you need it the most. Of course, you don't need 14 different prep books. You don't need 12 hours a day of studying. You just need a process, one that's simple, consistent, and built for the LSAT you're going to take. You've got to have a clear calendar, a reason for everything you're doing, a system for tracking your improvements, and most importantly, a feedback loop that turns mistakes into process. The LSAT's not about your talent, it's about the precision and how you study. And this year, it's more beatable than ever before. All you've got to do is stop making it harder than it is.